Hello, everyone. Thank you guys for being here tonight. My name is Aaron Thomas. I am in charge of party affairs for the North Carolina Democratic Party. It's exciting to be back in North Carolina. I started 2 weeks ago, and I just wanted to say that the reason why I came back to North Carolina is because it's a chance to really build our party infrastructure and really cement in what we need going forward and be more efficient, more effective. And it's not just for this coming cycle, but it's a commitment to every cycle after that. To just give you a little bit of background on what I've been doing over the last 5 years, well, I should say 6 or 7 years. My first campaign was back in 2014. It was a rural state rep race in Illinois, central Illinois. And then in 2015, I worked in Philadelphia. 2016, I was in Guilford County. I worked for the Hillary Clinton campaign and the coordinated campaign in High Point and Greensboro. And then I've also worked on congressional races, coordinated campaign in Pennsylvania for governor and for Senate. And then most recently, I worked for the Biden campaign as the statewide training director in New Hampshire. And then I was also part of the Biden-Harris direct mail team. And so I'm just really happy to be here and be a resource for all of you and build not transactional relationships, but honest to God relationships with people in every single community. And so I look forward to, once we sort of have the ability to meet in person, I would love a chance to talk to each and every one of you. But again, I just want to say thank you very much for being here tonight. I appreciate you, all of you, taking the time to do so. And I'll pass it back to Shante.
Thank you so much, Aaron. I'm actually going to pass it off to Representative Hawkins.
Good. Yes. Sorry about joining a little late. It would not let me in. Thank you, Aaron and Shante. Zack Hawkins, state representative and from Durham County, but used to serve as a state officer and had the opportunity last cycle to take part in the Chop It Up effort, which also ended up with the Shop Talk effort in the Biden campaign to specifically engage Black men. And as after the campaign ended, one of the things that we thought was really important here in North Carolina is that we, along with Devonte and a few others that took part in those conversations, that we really wanted to make sure that men of color were prioritized because we are an amazing voting bloc. We're incredibly loyal to the Democratic Party and to the Democratic base. We share those values, but we need to make sure that we're doing the intentional work of reaching out to men of color, engaging them, allowing them to see who represents them and how they can get involved and how the policies impact their lives, but most importantly, to hear back and make sure that there's some authentic community building that's happening. So that's what tonight is about. And so I'm so excited for everyone that's joining and even more excited about the panelists. And so I see one of my colleagues that's here, Representative Charles Graham. Representative Charles Graham is just someone who's represented his community incredibly well, and just glad to have him on tonight. We have Mr. Tavares Bostic on tonight. I love what he has on in the community leadership that he's giving. We have Devonte Wilson and Darrell Gibson that are on to share their perspective, and it's really important that people see these brothers, that they see these folks. And so tonight is just an authentic conversation as brothers chopping it up, talking about what's going on, how we feel about what's going on in the party policy, and how we can engage the community. So if everyone's okay with getting started, I'll go ahead and send it over to Representative Charles Graham. Tell them a little bit about yourself and why you think it's important to have this type of engagement with men of color.
Can you hear me now? All right. Well, listen, it's good to be with you, and want to thank you, Zack, for giving me this opportunity to be a part of this important engagement and these discussions going forward. As Zack says, I do represent Robeson County in the General Assembly, and I've been doing that now. This is my 6th term. We've seen a lot. We've seen a lot over the previous years. We know there's a lot of work to be done, especially with our communities of color. And I represent about 52% of my district is Lumbee. And we have another large percentage of the Black communities all up throughout Robeson County. And I do serve a large proportion of Robeson County, and about 65% of the county. And in reality, my district is primarily minority. I'm glad to stand up on the floor of the General Assembly and represent the folks that I represent. And you know, we have a diverse county now, a diverse communities. And one of the things I share the same sentiments with Zack about engaging our men of color, coming up with ways to help them understand what the issues are throughout North Carolina, as far as you know, their values, and making sure that they understand what's at stake in these election cycles, and not letting them forget those important issues. And Zack and I, we see those things on a day-to-day basis. We see the lay of the land and what's trying to be, what's happening in our General Assembly and across our state as far as undermining our people of color. And I think, you know, from a community leadership perspective, we need to encourage and almost insist that our men of color step up and be engaged and participate in a positive way. And I know there's a lot of and a variety of interest. So what I'd like to see happen come from this is empowerment of our men of color, and encouraging them to be a part of this process, because it's very important. Someone has always said to me, if you're not at the table, you will be a part of the menu. So we want to take this platform and use it in ways that we can encourage our men of all ages to be a part of this process. And I'm just excited to be a part of this and look forward to our discussions going forward. And thank you, Zack. And I'd like to say hello to everyone that's in, you know, and that's engaged in our conversations.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brother Graham. You know, so this conversation, we had an official kickoff last week with, you know, sort of a statewide kickoff to let everyone know what we're doing. And then we said, you know what, we got to take this show on the road. And so that's why we have this specific region, the Sandhills region, which is, you know, greater Cumberland area, which includes, you know, Scotland and Hoke, as well as Robeson and others, because we want to make sure that the further we get down with that, people are having city level conversations. So everybody gets a chance to chop it up. And I do this work alongside, I just saw him pop on with Matt Hughes, who's the commissioner, and with Floyd McKissick, and then we'll go over to Commissioner Bostic after co-chair McKissick sort of give his opening remarks.
Sure, I'd like to thank all of you that are participating in this event this evening. It really is essential that we begin these dialogues, we get it going, because we all know that the Democratic Party has lots of people who really work diligently each and every day in elective offices and whatever they may serve in to help the residents of the state of North Carolina. The thing we have to understand is that we just can't get engaged 60 days before an election or 120 days before an election to mobilize people if we want to get the votes and turnouts that we need when election cycles come around. And I'm not talking about every 4 years, but I'm talking about each and every time there's election, regardless of whether it's for a county commissioner, for the school board, for city council, town council, whatever it may be. We need to be a vehicle for beginning that communication. We need to be a vehicle for helping to discuss the problems as well as the solutions, as well as the policies and appropriations that are necessary to take this state forward, not just when it comes to General Assembly, not just when it comes to electing a governor or lieutenant governor, but each and every day in ways that impact your lives, So I'm proud to be a part of this Chop It Up program and look forward to assisting in these types of events all across our state of North Carolina. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Now I grew up Pentecostal, and in Pentecostal they don't have time. They have no concept of time. So I appreciate. I believe you just the AME version. That was short version. So with that, I'll pass it over to brother Bostic. Talk about why you think it's important and a little bit about you.
Thank you. And thank everyone for the opportunity to join you all for this Chop It Up conversation. So for me, I'm in Richmond County. I'm still within my first term. My pop is a pastor, so I understand the value of time, so I'll be very quick. But yeah, so for me, since moving back to North Carolina now about 6 years ago, I've dedicated myself to making sure that brothers in politics, people of color, specifically Black folks in my community, understand what's really going on. There's been a shift in Richmond County when it comes to politics, the idea of politics, the type person that people want to see representing them. And so for me, it's been about being in the community every day, whether, it's election time or not. And that's really what our people want to see. They want to see that we're not just coming in when we want them to wear T-shirts and work the polls and all of that stuff for us. They want to know that we care for them. They want to know that they're taken care of by the folks who want to represent them. I believe in friendship. And for me, going in from community to community, I believe in creating those friendships. And then later, when it is time for folks to run, if you've been able to create those relationships, those people will return the favor when it's time for us to need them. So I'm thankful for conversations like this. I wish that there were certainly more people on the call tonight, but tonight we'll start with us and hopefully we can get the message out to everyone else. Thanks.
Right. Thank you, Brother Bostic. I appreciate that. Thank you for your service to Richmond County. And I see Darrell Gibson on.
Yes, sir. Good evening. Good evening, Mr. Zack, and to all of you. I too am grateful for this opportunity. I serve presently as a member of our Board of Commissioners here in Scotland County, having served 10 years prior as a member of our school board. And, just kind of listening into the conversation and thinking about my own personal journey, I did not come from a history of political leaders in my own family. Much of the reason that I got into this arena of leadership and servanthood is because of what Representative Graham said. If you're not at the table, then you're going to be on the menu. And I saw so many times that our community, and even still, Scotland County is still in need of more shifting as it relates to those who are in leadership. There's a regime that's been in place for some time, and it's not often talked about because you don't want to ruffle too many feathers, but we still need change because even now, there are still communities that are underserved, underrepresented, and some of those who are serving still are not concerned, as Commissioner Bostic talked about those in our underserved communities until it's time for election. And you can throw them $100, they'll go work the polls for you, and then they don't see you again until you need them to work again. And I think that's one of the things that we've got to try and put a handle on, I know in our community, and just getting people to understand the need for loyalty, commitment, and accountability. Not just having leaders who show up to your events election year, but then the next year you don't see them. For me, it's if you didn't come on year 3, year 4, we don't really need your donation. I think the second thing, and I'm a Baptist preacher, so sometimes we can lose time, okay? But I think the second thing that concerns me when we talk about especially our brothers of color, men of color, I'm only 32 years old. And so I would be seen as a rookie, as a youngster. And one of the things that I see in our community that we battle is those who are of the senior age bracket not willing to pass the baton and recognize that there is going to be a shift in leadership at some point, whether we want it to happen or not. You know, when we've served for 30 and 35 years, we want to hold on to it and not pass it on. And it makes me think about the scripture that talks about there arose a generation who knew not God. And I think that's part of the reason that we're seeing such a gap or an absence of our men of color. There's a generation who did not get the baton passed to them. And so now the generation that's coming up after is trying to find our way, trying to fit in. But listen, it's evident on our call tonight that we're making a good start at it. So I'm grateful to be a part of it.
Oh man, that you dropped the word tonight, brother. I appreciate that. Good Baptist preacher always leaves a good word. But you're exactly right. It's about authentic engagement. So many times we hear that it's right before the election, and I think men of color, people of color, are tired of that. And I can relate more than you can imagine to that next generation and passing the baton. And so hopefully these kinds of conversations can help us build. And we just go from one pastor to the next. Because I see Representative Garland Pierce has just joined, who's an esteemed member of the General Assembly and someone that I look up to. And so Garland, we're just going around doing the introductions of ourselves. We're doing the non-Pentecostal version. We're doing the AME version, I guess, to sort of walk through you know, why it's important to engage men of color, and then we'll pass it on to, after you, Representative Pierce, to Devonte Wilson. He's going to moderate the remainder of the conversation. You're muted.
Good afternoon. Okay, just delighted to be here tonight. Just left a meeting with one of our sheriffs in our part of the community, neighborhood watch and situations like that, particularly in the minority community. Good conversation about things we need to do. So I think what we're doing tonight is very timely, and I think we need to do all that we can. This small group, but it was a group of concerned citizens trying to make the community a better place. So I'm just delighted to be on the call tonight, and hope I can share something that will be beneficial to all those on the call.
All right. And thank you for that, Representative Pierce. And now we have Devonte Wilson. So good to see so many young brothers on tonight in leadership, because that next generation has to be strong. And Devonte is one of those, along with Brother Bostic and Brother Gibson. He was the first, well, not the first, but he was one of the first African-American presidents of the Democrats in North Carolina. Is now doing some other work. And believe it or not, we got a trend here, and he's a minister. And so he's going to moderate our conversation tonight. But so excited for what is going to come out of this, and hopefully we can keep that conversation going.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Representative Zack Hawkins, definitely a friend and mentor of mine, and to all of the panelists who have agreed to come on and pretty much have this genuine, authentic conversation. It's so important. I think every now and then conversations like this that kind of push that envelope of comfortability is important, that we kind of stir the pot a little bit, as my grandmother used to say. And so, again, it's so important that we have these conversations. And one of the things, well, before I get deep into that, for those I have not had the pleasure of meeting on this call, my name is Devonte Wilson. I currently work with Congresswoman Ross. I'm actually here in the district office right now. We just finished up a couple of meetings here. Again, and also, as you saw advertised, I'm the Vice President of Communications for the Interfaith Caucus. So extremely excited to be able to serve in that capacity, as well as, former YDNC president. So I'm thankful again just for the wonderful fellowship. I'll keep our terms going that I've had the opportunity to have with each and every one of you, and definitely want to give a special shout out to, and I'm going to use a personal privilege here. I see a lot of Moore County people on here, and I'm excited. I love seeing my Moore County family, and I'll even put a plug in for my cousin Tavares. A lot of people, I didn't even know he was going to be on this call until I saw the flyer. A lot of people don't know, but that's my cousin, so it runs in the bloodline. The work that we do. What I want to do is I have a few questions I want to ask the panel. And again, not necessarily formal as if we were in a campaign season, but to have an open, genuine conversation. I'll pose my first question by saying this. I remember when I was teaching middle school, and some of my students asked, especially when I left to come work for the state Senate, and then after the state Senate, I then came to Congress. And they asked me, well, why am I, why leave? Why change fields? And why do I do what I do in government? And I said, well, when you consider you had a terrible, bloody civil war that freed enslaved Americans, but then you have the 14th Amendment to the Constitution. It granted African Americans the rights of citizenship. But if you notice, none of that really translated over into the ability to vote. And so when you start to look at that, it's almost like, don't give me a bone and think, no, I know when something is working for me and when something isn't. But before I get deep into that, I think I overlooked somebody. Is it Mr. Larry Reed? Is he on the call?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
let me.
Yes, I'm on the call.
I just got your name here. Yeah, let's go ahead and hear from you, and then we'll keep it going.
Yes, I'm again, my name is Larry Readdy. I'm the chairman here in Hoke County. I've been on board here, maybe about 6-7 months now. So I'm knee deep into, trying to keep our county blue, and we're working hard at it. I have an amazing team here in Hoke County. But we do see that we have to do a better job at reaching out to our African-American community as far as getting people registered to come out and vote, to talk about issues that is of concern to our Hope County citizens.
Awesome. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mr. Readdy. We're glad to have you on representing the great Hope County. Bucktown, I believe it's called. I believe that's right. So the first question I want to propose to the panelist group tonight is, and I'll give about 5-6 seconds kind of come up with an answer here, but what are some ways in which we can engage? All right, and I'll call on you. What are some ways in which you think we can encourage our local communities to become more politically engaged? Of course, we're living in a time now where people are starting to hear, when they hear the word politics, they immediately shut down, or it's almost seemed like a cuss word or a shiver goes down their spine. They're kind of just done with it. But it's so important to stay engaged. And all of us on this call, I believe, have some sense of understanding why that is so important. And for those that are on this call that may not know why it's important, this is also going to be a great education opportunity as well to inform you why it's important. So I don't want to assume that everyone on this call understands why it's important to be politically and civically engaged. Tavares, let me come to you, Commissioner. Why do you think it's important, or rather, what are some ways, let's form it that way, what are some ways in which we can get our local communities to become more politically engaged? What are your thoughts, man?
I think a big thing is our ability to stay engaged in our communities, right? There's sometimes when folks decide that they want to run for whatever position, it's the first time that communities are getting an opportunity to see them. So there's no engagement, there's no relationship building, there's nothing until that particular person decides to run. I was just having a conversation about there not being enough people of color, specifically, Black men and women who are deciding to go into politics. What I was talking about is our ability to kind of raise up, we hear that term, raise up a generation, but there are folks, young people in our community who are ready for these positions. Those relationships sometimes are just, maybe the community doesn't fully understand how to cultivate some of those skills that people are showing early in order to push them into the realm of politics, policy, law, even, that kind of a thing. But personally, I have tried to stay in those communities, try to have those very tough conversations with people that look like me, and not necessarily talk so much about politics as much as it is talking about our ability to care for each other. And then those things translate over into, what we do as politicians and all of that. Create a healthy relationship with the community. They will be engaged in the political process.
Tavares, I want you to put a quick plug in. There's something I noticed you usually do around the holidays with I think it's a nonprofit. Is it create? It's I want to mess it up. I know, is it Brothers for Another Creating Kings? Help me, because I think what you do ties into this a little bit with service. And can you talk about that real quick?
Sure, thank you. So 7 years ago, I created an organization called Black Brothers Leaning on Another Creating Kings. It focused on young African-American males ages 12 to 18. And a big part of what we do is community service. I think I saw my good sister and friend, Helen Post Mills on. She's helped us with the back to school rally that we did a couple of years ago. And we've been doing that for a long time. We do a turkey on every table, Santa on the move. We do scholarships. We're helping families. We won't call them needy or call it charity. We're just loving on the people in our community. And that's really, been the big thing for me. I'm always saying that no matter it doesn't matter if I'm county commissioner or not, my obligation is always to make sure that the people in my community is taken care of. So I'm pretty sure that you can probably walk in my community, north, south, east, and west, say, hey, what is it that Tavares ran on? They may not be able to tell you that. What they will be able to tell you is that when Miss Cheryl called me and said that Lil Willie was acting up in school, I went to Miss Cheryl's house and I talked to Willie, right? If family X needed something, they knew that they could call me and we would get it done. And in turn, I really didn't have to say much when I said, hey, please vote for me. They were like, well, yeah, we're going to vote for you because you loved on us. So that's what I mean. Do the necessary work in your community. And then for a lot of the conversations that we're having, the folks will come.
Former Senator Floyd McKissick, who's also, of course, our first vice chair of our state party. From an NCDP perspective, I'll ask you the same question. Again, what are some ways in which we can get more of our local communities politically engaged? What are perhaps some things that we're doing? Maybe this can be an avenue of that. But from your perspective and your experience, what are some ways in which you believe that we can also get our communities more politically engaged?
Well, I think there's several ways. I think, first of all, you need to understand the issues that are confronting particular cities or towns or counties. I mean, all communities are unique. I mean, what's common and unique to Durham is not going to be what it's going to be over in Lumberton or where it is in Fayetteville. So, I mean, I think you need to have your finger on the pulse of community opinion. And that means getting local leaders involved. That's going to be not only your political leaders, but also your leaders that are in the communities of faith in your churches. That's going to be dealing with people that are out there working with our youth and understanding what it is that they find important, that they find significant, and making sure that that's part of the conversation. It may be about programs to help kids that are in school. It may be about parks and playgrounds. It may be about tutorial programs that are needed. It may be about crime that's impacting some communities in ways that it doesn't impact others. I'm not going to sit there and say that those problems are all common everywhere, but know what those local community issues are. Get your fingers on the pulse. Bring in those community activists. Listen and learn, and then come up with plans to get them engaged and involved in a meaningful way that can bring about some change. I know I served on city council in Durham for about 8 years. I think the local level, we can do more to help people than a lot of people perhaps recognize, more than what the state can do sometimes. So, I mean, I think if we get that local level of engagement, if we listen attentively, if we come up with plans and we begin a network of contacts, I mean, contacts that are ongoing, not just coming together for one meeting on one occasion, but from those meetings, coming up with strategies and tactics and how we're going to move about getting things done. And when you're talking about doing it politically, you're talking about doing it at the precinct level, at the county level. But I mean, I think the key thing is finding those common binds, those common interests, those common goals that can be pursued. So that there are things that they relate to that are important in their lives.
I just want to jump in real quick and say that,
Sure.
just to reiterate what Commissioner Bostic and Senator McKissick said, often we go into conversations with the youth and we assume that they don't have their own sense of purpose. And I think that that's a horrible thing for us to do, going in there and making an assumption. And I think I like to use James 1:25, whoso looketh in the perfect law of liberty, not being a forgetful hearer, but a doer of the work, he shall be blessed in his deed. When you make that commitment, like Tavares said, when you make that commitment to the people that are in the community, when you show the interest, when you go the whole 9 yards, you will see results. And that means day in and day out from this point on tomorrow. There's obviously we want to fight for miles, not just inches and feet, but each day is a chance for that incremental change and that incremental progress that we're trying to achieve.
No, thank you for that, Aaron. And I think you bring up a really good point. Of course, as all of the panelists have said so far, there's so much that's spewing out over the airways, that we're seeing, and that's kind of creating this apathetic feel towards the political process. And so while we understand it's definitely creating, while the other side may be doing certain things to kind of put that fear or what have you into people to try to turn them off from the process, like I said, building those relationships and showing up, putting our boots to the ground, making sure that we're there and it's genuine, not just every 4 years, but every chance that we get. I think is so important. Representative Graham and Representative Pierce, I want to pose this next question to you two. Representative Graham, I'll come to you first. Do you feel, and perhaps you may see this in Robeson County or just in general, do you feel citizens are paying enough attention to voter suppression tactics that we see happening now in North Carolina, and across the nation in general? Do you feel like citizens are paying enough attention? Because right now we're seeing this massive sweep happen across the states, our state included. Do you feel like we are putting enough emphasis on it? And I'll even be more specific. Do you even think more people of color are we paying enough attention? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think there's so many issues out there that many of our constituents, my constituents, are concerned with, and of course, I'm going to mention bread and butter issues, how to make it from one paycheck to another paycheck. Those things in my community are very overwhelming. How do I get that loaf of bread? How do I make this payment? How do I get gas in my vehicle? I think those issues are issues that really overshadow this issue of voting rights and some of the things that we care about and we hear about pretty often and we pay attention to. But on the other hand, I think for the most part, I think folks are paying attention to voting disparities and voting rights issues. But I'm not quite sure lay people, that's their number one concern. But I do believe that they have that in their subconscious. This is something that they see on TV. It's something they hear about. And I don't think they really delve into how that's affecting our political arena, how it's affecting how decisions are made. So I think there's a conscious out there, but I don't think it's the thing that, from where I sit or from what I see, is the overriding issue about, living and being able to pay the bills. So saying that, I think our youth would have a tendency to really, and I'm talking about young people of color, because they're on the media all the time. That drives them, that motivates them. But I think our youth, for the most part, are in tune to what's going on, in that arena. And I think they are intelligent enough to realize that something wrong is going on here. Something is not right about what they're hearing and seeing. And I think our youth, and I'm thinking young people who are able to vote, can play a major role in that, in terms of getting the message out to maybe their parents or their grandparents about how this is impacting their lives on an everyday basis, from one election cycle to the other. I saw a gentleman today wearing a campaign hat, and was in a restaurant, and I wanted to ask him, was almost wanted to ask him, well, what motivates you to wear that particular hat? but I didn't. Middle-aged guy. And I just backed off and I thought about that. And you know, it's just very discouraging that, you know, our people of color are blinded by some of the things that we're seeing in the media. And I will be honest with you, we're chopping this up now, and they will fall for $1. And you know, that bothers me. And they're not looking at, you know, what is that really costing you and your family? But you know, I think our youth are really in tune to what's going on politically with voting rights and those issues that are you know, out there in the media and in the forefront today as we look at the media. And I think that they could be a vehicle that could help us, could be an engine of bringing some of those issues to home and how it affects their grandparents and their parents and their nephews, their uncles and aunts. I think they're paying attention. I really do. But are we giving them the motivation and the encouragement to be a voice? You know, trying to get the message out in terms of how that negatively impacts our communities of color.
You raised a really good point, because I remember one time, even as I was speaking with Miss Eva Clayton, I was talking about you know, that generational divide or that generational gap, and how we can even begin to bridge, you know, those two sides together, and you know, perhaps talking about this issue in different avenues could be a caveat for doing that. Right.
Yeah, I'd like to say I served with your Congress lady in the General Assembly. She was my seatmate, and we had a great time together. And I wish her the very best. I really have fond memories working with her and having some of those secret conversations at our desk.
I'll definitely let her know. She'll be in the office in the morning. I'll definitely let her know.
Yes, sir.
Representative Pierce, I want to bring that same question to you. You know, from your perspective, do you feel like citizens aren't paying enough attention to, again, voter suppressive tactics that are not only affecting North Carolinians, but nationwide? Do you feel like people are paying enough attention to that? What are your thoughts?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, first of all, you got to remind people that elections have consequences, and the day-to-day issues that they face are based on past elections or elections. And that's the main thing. And those of us who are in elected positions, we must deliver. By that, I mean, we need to be there for them. You just can't, when elections are over, you just can't go away and come back. The one thing that I always tell folks that I would never want anybody to say is the only time that they see me is during election season. That is, I just even hate that terminology. But I think we just got to remind people that there are people who have no problem trying to take your vote away, but you got to let them understand the importance of the vote. That's the bottom line. I mean, when it's all said and done, if they don't understand the importance of their vote, we've got to remind them. They say so many times, my vote will not make a difference. But there have been elections. I got Brother Gibson on the call tonight. Elections where we have watched people in our county lose elections, county commissioner race, by 1 or 2 votes. So every vote makes a difference, and we've got to continue to remind folks. But those who are elected must be there for the folks who've elected them. If not, they just think, they just let it go, forget about it. I'm not going to worry about it. They don't really care about me. So first of all, you got to get rid of the apathy before you can go where we're concerned about what you're talking about. But it's the voter apathy when people feel hopeless. And there's a saying, a voteless people is a hopeless people. So we've got to do all that we can to encourage them, let them know that all politics are local. It all starts on the local level. And some of the issues they're facing that I get calls about, the Congress lady get calls about, bread and butter issues, as Charles said, issues we've got to deal with. But they've got to understand you got to get the right folks in the positions to do the things that are necessary for them to survive and their families to survive. So I just leave it at that. But elections have consequences. And when people when they start complaining about things, you got to remind them, did you vote? There used to be a saying in the barbershop when I was a boy. It says, if you don't vote, don't talk politics in here. So you got to be a part of it. You got to be in the game in order to make things happen. So we got to continue to encourage people to vote and let them know that there are schemes and games to try to take away their right to vote. And I think educate. That's what we got to do.
That's powerful. Aaron, I want to come to you on that. Representative Pierce mentioned something. He talked about voter apathy. One of the things I've come to realize when there was my experience at the grassroots level, my experience with helping constituents at the state Senate, and now here in U.S. Congress, I'm noticing every day that just how important stories are, right? And how stories connects us, and helping people to understand that with those bread and butter issues, those bread and butter issues are tied to votes. The people that you send to the state, to whether it be county or state or federal, they are acting on your behalf on those bread and butter issues. But what's happening is because of so much that's out there, people are beginning to develop, as Representative Pierce talked about, that voter apathy. From your experience that you have seen, state level and nationwide, just from your background, what are you seeing as a way that we can work towards lessening voter apathy from your background? And then Mr. Darrell Gibson, I'm gonna come to you with the same question. Aaron, what are your thoughts on that?
So everyone's saying something that's in the same category. We have a finite amount of time before everyone is inundated, whether it's ads on TV, whether it's social media, whether it's all these different venues, whether it's direct mail that they see in their mailbox. We have a finite amount of time to really get down there, like you said, on the grassroots level and pierce that apathy. And so we're coming out of COVID. Hopefully we're rounding the corner and we'll be able to really get out there and be in person. But really, honestly, we have about 6 months to build the necessary party infrastructure and relationships, and use the relationships that our county commissioners have, that our mayors have, that our local, extremely local elected officials have, whether it's a committee person or a first vice chair, second vice chair. There's so much that we can do. If you pick out now, today, tomorrow, this weekend, pick out 3 to 5 people that you can talk to, and I mean bust their chops every single day for the next 6 to 12 months, that will make a difference in terms of building a neighborhood model, organizing model that will really build out the structure we need to be successful for not just Senate, but all the way down the ballot. Like, that's the type of commitment we have to make, because the only way we win on the Senate level is if we boost, like, on the state representative level, on the state Senate level, if we max out in different areas, if we go and make a commitment to rural areas that didn't get the attention in 2020 or 2018, or even back in 2016. Like, there was a commitment to be frank and transparent. The commitment was there in Durham, but the commitment wasn't there for High Point. And so the only way we make a commitment to High Point is if we have the party infrastructure and we have people committed in every single area. And so we have, like I said, the word is finite. We have a finite amount of time. I would say we have a 3-phase period of time. First phase being the first 6 months, the next phase being the next 6 months, and the 6 months leading up until the election to really, like, figure this out and get a concrete plan in place.
That's a good perspective to look at that, and understanding those windows that we have. Because again, I think about something my grandfather says all the time: you will never see the same cloud in the same sky twice in the same day. So in other words, you got to take advantage of those opportunities when you can. Mr. Gibson, Darrell, I want to come to you with the same question. What are some ways that we can turn people back on? What are some ways that we can turn people back on to the political process? How can we help to lessen voter apathy? What are your thoughts on that, man?
Thank you. As I listen to everyone who's talked, I think everyone has really hit some strong points. And one of the things that I am finding in our local community that I think is going to slowly help with that concern of voter apathy is genuine conversations. Sometimes I find myself borderline with exactly how much information to share, but I think people need to know the truth. And sometimes what I've seen is that because I am, to say, welcomed and allowed to be at the table, I feel like I've arrived. And so because my children are going to be taken care of and those connected to me are going to be okay, I forget that I don't represent just my own small
Hold on, Mr. Gibson, I think you went out on us.
I unmuted. I'm sorry, but I don't just represent for the good of my own children, but I'm concerned about even those children who don't have advocates for themselves. And I think we've got to make sure that we're sharing with people genuine conversations, because a lot of the reason I think that people have become so hopeless, as Representative Pierce talked about, is because they get told false things. And so, as Representative Graham said, when you're concerned about how you're going to feed your family, how you're going to put gas in your car, you're consumed in those things, and then having been lied to about so many things, you start not to really care. And so for myself, I use my commissioner meetings. I have, a group of about 20 people who, after every commissioner meeting, they know they're going to hear directly from me, because there are things that they will see in the public's eye that they won't understand sometimes. And so I want to do as we're doing now, chop it up and say, look, this is what's really going on. And we've got to pull our community together, galvanize the people together so that we can make a difference. And finally, I think as elected officials, we've got to always remember that the same votes that got us in position are the same votes that can remove us from positions. Because sometimes we get in these places and think that we're unmovable. And I continue to tell, those who I'm connected to and those of whom we serve, that we don't just vote for people just because they're running. We want to vote for people who we know have our best interests at heart and are connected to us, as so many have talked about, even outside of the election time. One more thing that came to my mind, and that is learning to deal with people where they are. One of the things, Representative Pierce is also my pastor, and one of the things that I've gained from him is you can't go to people to talk about political things when they're hungry or when they don't have clothing. You've got to meet that need, and then you may be able to break through and talk about other things. And I think sometimes we want to focus on things that are not as urgent to people without ever meeting their urgent need.
No, you're exactly right. When you said that, I thought about, if a man is hungry, would you give him a stone? Right. You're exactly right. Tavares, I want to come to you from one commissioner to another. You do something that I actually am quite a fan of. Now, remind me, every time after y'all meetings in Richmond, you would do something. I'm forgetting the first part of it, but I know corner is like but essentially you were doing the exact same thing, kind of doing a digest to your folks. The question I want to ask you is, with you doing that, and even hearing Commissioner Gibson say the exact same thing, is that a vehicle you do to help combat disinformation or misinformation out there? That's really the question is, what are some ways in which we can combat disinformation or misinformation that's being given out there to the folks?
Yeah, we have to find ways to just simply make it plain. And that's why I wanted to create Commissioner's Corner. I realized that I was asking a lot of people to come to the meeting. I was saying, you guys voted for me, but I can't have you guys leave me on an island. Come to the meeting, blah, 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 blah. What ended up happening is people were coming to the meeting and they were leaving just so ridiculously confused. All of the numbers coming out, the figures coming out, just different information. So I wanted to create Commissioner's Corner to basically simplify it, right? And a lot of times the way that we've seen in my community that I've seen, I'll just put it on me. The way that I've seen information come out, it's almost been intentionally confusing so that people don't know what type questions to ask. They don't know what direction to go if they want to see particular changes being made. And then they are put into a position where we can only rely on the person giving us the information. Well, what happens when the person is trying to intentionally give you confusing information? So for me, the one thing that I have said is that either the amount of openness that I give to my constituents in Richmond County, the amount of openness is either going to really keep me in this seat or it's going to boot me. But either way, the people know that when I'm giving them information, they know I'm coming to them as real as I possibly can, as transparent as I can. And honestly, Representative Pierce has been such a huge mentor for me. When I've heard him speak to people, it's as plain as they come, right? He knows how to, like my brother said, he knows how to meet people where they are. He knows how to simplify that information. If he doesn't know, he's not going to fake it. So I've kind of taken some of those pages from him. I've married it with the skill that I already have as a therapist and a community leader, and I just try to give that to the good people. That's it.
Chairman Readdy, I want to bring the same question to you with that. Of course, when it comes to, getting ready for the elections or what have you, we're putting out information. We know that opponents of the candidates that we endorse are putting out information. What are some things that, even as a county party chair, what are some things that you all do at a grassroots level that helps to combat misinformation or disinformation? Are there some strategies out there that y'all have done in Hoke County that you have seen effective? What are your thoughts on that?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Here in Hoke County, we try to communicate with the people, because we notice, like somebody mentioned earlier about being truthful with people. There's a lot, especially with the younger generation. There's a lot of misinformation that they gather on social media, and they take that as the truth. Without question. So what we try to do as party leaders is we try to put good information out. We do flyers. We try to contact people door to door, talk to people. We try to do phone banks, try to call people and share information with them. We use a number of different tactics in doing that and putting information out. We have like most of my committees, we have a pretty good sized contact list. So that's another avenue that we use to share information with people.
Awesome. Thank you. And again, of course, the theme to that answer has been communication, and not just regular communication, but effective communication, measurable communication. Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. One of the things I've been picking up as we've been talking has truly been, Commissioner Gibson mentioned it, and Representative Pierce mentioned it, and Commissioner Bostic mentioned it, is meeting people where they are. And one question I want to bring to you, Chairman McKissick, is, and Tavares, and I'll also bring this question to you, because I know you're also a graduate of an HBCU as well. In terms of meeting people where they are, what are some ways in which we can help, or some strategies rather, where we can try to increase HBCU support? We have seen where that has been a crucial part of the Democratic agenda. But again, we do want to see more political engagement, civic engagement from these wonderful, illustrious institutions. So Chairman McKissick, I'll come to you first, then Tavares, I know I'll come to you next. What are some ways, Chairman, on ways that we can get more HBCU support and engagement?
Well, I mean, first, I think we look to HBCU alumnus and getting them involved and engaged in communities that they're involved in, so that they are visible and that they're out there and that they are returning things to the community in ways that they can, and helping build support for our HBCUs. I mean, they need to have support. But I mean, and in some instances, just getting kids more enlightened, more engaged about some of the things involved in political conversations today. I mean, I find that there's a heightened level of concern about police misconduct and police abuse and things of that nature. So, I mean, things like that have to be addressed. There's issues such as, I think just yesterday I was reading where they're proposing a state constitutional amendment that would deal with affirmative action and the teaching of critical race theory in the schools. Now, that critical race theory is all about race baiting to pull out people to vote that they think that the conservatives believe will help get them over the line with some of the other candidates. I mean, and if they get a constitutional amendment like that on the ballot, then that's helping them to message to a certain constituency that's going to help them stay in office. Along with redistricting that's going to be taking place. So do we need to talk about redistricting and understand what it means in terms of the redrawing of legislative districts and congressional districts that have been done in a way that's been discriminatory? Absolutely. Do we need to talk about police misconduct? Yeah. Do we need to talk about critical race theory? Some of these things that are part of the dialogue, that are part of the messaging, that are part of what's going on and in the forefront of people we need to make sure that that those that are part of our historically Black colleges and universities can be active and engaged and involved in creating outreach to students and potential students, are just out there involved in the community, not even necessarily involved in attracting new students to the HBCUs, but just involved with those students that are in high school or middle schools today. We can do it with their parents today. There's so much to be done. It's hard to know where to begin, but the key thing is engagement and communication and listening and sharing of information and pulling people together to begin that dialogue.
I think you made a really good point when you were referring to the touching that alumnus base, that alumni base, because a lot of times, as we've seen, especially when it comes to HBCU communities, a lot of times the parents have gone, their children may end up following their footsteps or what have you, and those connections that we have seen also. Tavares, you want to add on to that, man? So you're an Aggie Pride, right?
Yes, sir. So not only did I have the privilege and honor to attend the greatest HBCU on the planet, the other thing that I will say, and I stand all the way on the mountaintop and scream, recruit Black teachers from HBCUs, recruit Black teachers from HBCUs. This is something that I have screamed multiple times in a school system where you can go from kindergarten to 12th grade and not have a teacher that looks like you. It's the one thing. I'm looking at the chat. It's such a huge avenue what's happening. And I had the opportunity to go to the University of Pittsburgh for graduate school. But what's happened, a lot of those teachers from Pitt have come down to North Carolina. They get those jobs. They stay for a handful of years and then they leave, right? Because after undergrad, after grad school, you have to have post-grad experience, right? You come to a place like Richmond County, you get that, and then boom, gone. What I've encouraged our school board members to do is put together some type of proposal, offer incentives, whatever they can to get Black teachers to communities like Richmond County. For members in the community who have attended HBCUs, who are a part of fraternities and sororities, those folks have to get into the faces of students, of Black students. I'll be honest with you. I found A&T not because of Richmond Senior High School. I found it because I had folks to come to me and say, hey, where are you going to school? Richmond Senior High promoted predominantly white institutions, which is okay. But for the ones of us who wanted to attend HBCUs, we had to go digging. My parents did not go to college. They didn't know anything about college tours. They didn't have any money for me to go. So a lot of this information I had to find on my own without the help of the high school that I attended. So for many of us who went to HBCUs, those school districts, one, need to recruit Black teachers. Two, the people in that community who attended HBCUs need to get into the high schools and talk to the students. Fraternities and sororities have to be more active, and they have to marry those particular skills together in order to push Black students towards those institutions. Recruit Black teachers.
I just wanted to hop in really quick. Devonte, I think you're on mute.
Oh, my bad. I want to say, Aaron, this next question is actually for you, and you can actually tie your answer to this next question, because this next question I want to ask you kind of ties in what Chairman McKissick and Commissioner Bostic talked about, and basically is promoting and uplifting Black capital, right? So my question to you is, what are some ways in which, we as Black people and people of color in general can gain more political capital so that we know that elected officials truly are working for us? And the answer to the previous question, you can actually tie into this one. I can see if you want to tie into that. But what are some ways in which we can gain some more like political capital?
So I think just to start off with, you have to be fearless in terms of running everywhere. Building political capital means running everywhere and investing everywhere. That means your time, your effort, your money. With regards to the strategy to doing that and connecting that to, in terms of like building outreach and I guess bringing more people out to vote at HBCUs, what Senator McKissick and Commissioner Bostic said, it's a three-pronged approach. You've got the alumni, you reach out to alumni who are committed to the universities day in and day out. Then you reach out to you select specific faculty members that have the trust, the buy-in and trust from the students, so that when they put programs out there to get them involved, they're like, okay, that professor is great. I love that person. I can commit some time and effort to that. And then on the student front, we need to go, that's where digital comes in. And that's where we make that commitment to, of course, the new age, which is social media, where you talk to the people who have the social media clout that are politically engaged, so that they sort of reach out and into their sphere of influence and really bring people in. Because the bottom line is, I personally don't have a TikTok, but you better believe that there are people watching TikTok on those campuses. Black people are the creators. They create stuff on TikTok, and then it's sort of retrofitted for white culture, but that's a different conversation that we can have at a different time. But the bottom line is, it's a commitment. It's a three-pronged strategy and you have to make a commitment on so many fronts. So in terms of just building our capacity and our sphere of influence, like, you have to make a commitment on every front and not let anything fall over the side, I would say.
Representative Graham, I want to pose that same question to you as well. No, thank you, Aaron. I think that's very interesting perspective there, is making sure that we are not leaving any rock unturned. Absolutely. Representative Graham, I want to ask you the exact same question, from what you're seeing in the legislature to those that lobby you to just even your constituency. What are some ways in which essentially people of color know that we can really hold our elected officials' feet to the fire, that they are promoting what we are advocating for, that they're working for us? What are you seeing? What are some ways in which people of color can really gain more political capital? Because right now, a lot of them feel like they don't have a lot of influence, they don't have a lot of pull. What are some things that they can be doing, or we can do together?
Well, one of the things I try to engage in the communities, to encourage the folks I represent to want to be a part of the process. And I think the way to do that is, when I'm not in session, and every opportunity I get, I want to engage in those communities to encourage individuals to pay attention to what's going on in the legislature, whether it's the legislature or the local community, is to be kind of a role model, so to speak, to the young people, and to be a source of information for the older folks. So I think as a legislator, and I always say this, we run all the time. We're elected every 2 years. So one of the things that I take a lot of pride in is getting into the community, engaging the community. I'm a human being just like they are. I have wants and desires and needs just like they do. So I try to, as often as I can, be in the community, engage in activities, to make folks aware that, you can come, you can talk to me. I'm approachable. I want you to know that I support your community, so to speak. And that I think that's one of the most, in terms of my capital and my time, is to be engaged and active in those communities. I've been into communities, and people have said, wow, you're coming down to our community. This is the first time I've ever had folks to say, this is the first time I've ever seen or to meet a representative. So getting into those communities, letting people, make them aware that we are genuinely concerned, and being compassionate is important as well. And I think our folks really appreciate that. And like someone said earlier, you don't come around every 2 years or every 4 years and ask for a vote. You try to get into the communities and engage and be involved in those communities. So I think that's, for me, it's just a matter of devoting time and effort to those situations and to those communities. So for me, that's very important.
That's powerful, Representative. I want to ask one more question, but I'm also going to ask that I'm going to ask all of you the exact same question, but you can also surmise it as well to kind of like your final statement as we're coming to the end of our time here. So I'll ask one more question, and it's kind of tying into like your closing statement as well. We have seen so much over the last, oh gosh, before pandemic, we were dealing with George Floyd, but then again, that was like so during pandemic as well as it carried over, and so much has happened to where there's a lot of fear. And I'm even, I don't like that word, but I think it's the accurate word that we're really seeing among a lot of people of color communities. They have deep concern for not only their future, but for the futures of their children. As we get ready, hopefully come towards the end of pandemic, and we see small businesses that are trying to stay afloat that suffered traumatic losses. There's just a lot of pressure. There's just a lot of pressure. I think I'd say it that way. There's just a lot of pressure that is really sitting on the people of color community. My final question, kind of combining with a closing statement from each of you, is what message do you have? And again, on this call, we have aunties, uncles, grandparents. We have everybody on this call. What message would you give them to pass along to their loved ones about the time that we're in? What message of hope or optimism? What message do you want to share in this final moment, considering the pressure that's facing the people of color community? What final message, words do you want to leave with them? I'm going to start from the bottom, work my way up. Chairman Larry Readdy, I'm gonna come to you, sir.
I would say we continue to communicate, but one thing I would want to emphasize to people is to exercise your right to vote, because that is our key to making change in our communities. And I agree, it is really stressful out there. And sometimes when I'm talking to people, they think that their vote won't make a difference. However, I tell people, I respond to them by telling them that, hey, listen, your vote does make a difference. It might not seem like it in the big scheme of things, but as someone mentioned earlier about someone running a campaign and losing by 1 or 2 votes. So your vote does make a difference. So I encourage people to exercise their right to vote. If the system is not working the way we think it should work, then we have the ability to make that change. So voting is the key thing I try to pass on to everyone.
Absolutely, especially for so many sacrifices that it took just to even get that ability. Absolutely, yes. Thank you. I think Mr. Darrell Gibson hopped off. Hopefully he hops back on. Representative Pierce.
Thank you. I'm gonna have to say good evening to y'all in a few minutes. I've got something to do. But I think I remember we had a chancellor at Fayetteville State called Dr. Hackney, I think was his name. But he would always say, be a committee of one. That's so important. If you want change, you got to be the change that you want. And it starts with you. And I think we said each one, reach one, each one, teach one. It's that concept of each person can do something to make a difference in their community and to change things. And just, you got to encourage them to do what they can. And I think a lot of times some people just feel like they don't have the ability to do. Everybody has something they can offer. Everybody got something they can bring to the table. During the civil rights struggles, there's a lot of people who sat on the porch and say, look, I can't march with you guys, but I can bake some pies. I can bake a cake to help the movement. So everybody can add something to the movement. Everybody can do something. So I think we've got to remind people to, because they're first to say, I don't have education like you. I don't have, they start all the things they don't have, but there's a lot of things that they do have, because a lot of our seniors have wisdom, a lot of our youth have. So everybody can do something. I think that's what we need to really encourage people. Everybody can do something in the movement. Thank you for allowing me to share that.
Thank you, Representative. Everybody can do something. Commissioner Gibson.
Yes, sir. I apologize. I'm back. You know, I'm really, really grateful for this conversation and time that we shared. And I hope that a number of things grow from this. But kind of in my closing, I just think about our local community just kind of went through a little back and forth battle between our commissioners and our school board on school funding. And I was a Lone Ranger vote on our Board of Commissioners in support of funding our schools at a greater level than the other commissioners desired to do. And it was for two reasons. One of those reasons, most particular, was every time I considered changing my stance, I saw the faces of those people that I knew when I saw them, they jump on my back because I did not do what was the right thing to do. And I say that to say that I think it is always important for us. I think Senator McKissick said it earlier, to keep our hands on the pulse of our community and never forget that we are their voices. We're not our own voices. We're not our own personal votes, but that we are there to represent the people. The second thing is, in the midst of our conversations, there were things being said by commissioners that was not true. And honesty is important. Finally, other commissioners joined me in saying, that's not really true. You know, if we're going to tell it, let's tell the truth. And so I go back to that. The second thing is, we've got to remain honest and true to the calling that we've signed up for and to the people who have elected us to do the work that we do.
Absolutely. Commissioner Bostic.
Again, I'm so very thankful for this opportunity, just to even get the invite by Brother Hawkins. I just appreciate everyone on the call. The one thing that I try my hardest to remind people of, for the Black folks that we're talking to and trying to get them engaged, 1619, the first slave comes to America. 1863, we get the Emancipation Proclamation. 1865, you get the 13th Amendment, right? Ratification goes by 1877. I'm speeding this up. Rutherford B. Hayes becomes president, pulled troops out of the South, Jim Crow starts. Speed up to the 1960s, Fair Housing Act, Voter Rights Act, Civil Rights Act, right? So if you want to put a marker on when Black people were technically fully free, we're talking about 1970. Do the math. 2021 minus 1970 is only 51 years, right? So for all of the folks that's in these communities, they have to realize that the work that we're doing, folks try to talk about these things like they're 500 years ago. 51 years is what we're talking about. So the work that we have to do is so important. And when we think about it, a lot of the work that we have to do in communities of color is still very much in infancy. So staying engaged, a lot of the things that we talked about in this conversation, genuine conversations, as Brother Gibson talked about, being able to put in sweat equity in these communities, genuine love and support for the people that we want to come and support us. There's no way that those folks come and support us if they know that they're only going to see our faces during election time. So it's important for us to continue to do the good work in these communities. And I'll leave with this. Relationships come down to three things: being intentional, putting in the effort, put it into practice. All of the things that we've talked about on this call tonight, practicing those things every single day. Thanks, guys.
Absolutely. Chairman McKissick.
Sure. I think the key thing is that we can't become complacent. We have to be active, engaged, and involved. And more importantly, look at the changes that can occur when we elect good people to public office. And I point to someone like President Biden, who came into office, he got this pandemic under control. And we get to the point now we can take off our mask and we can reopen our schools. We can do what's necessary to resume normalcy in our lives. Think about the $1,400 that went to bank accounts of people as a result of pandemic relief that the Democrats passed up in Washington. Look at the money that just went to people's accounts in the last 24 hours for child care, that they wouldn't have gotten before. Child care tax credit money, $300 a child for most people. Look at the extended long-term unemployment benefits for those that needed it, an extra $300 a week. You would not have it. It's tangible things that are in the bank accounts of people today that came about because of what occurred last November and elected the right man as president of this country. If the wrong decision had been made, those decisions I'm just talking about today would not have occurred, that impact people's lives and the quality of lives. Do we have a long way to go? The answer is yes. Are we making marginal progress in getting there? The answer is positively, absolutely. And we can continue that positive momentum, not become complacent, not get comfortable with the past. Let's not think that we have somehow overcome or that somehow in this process we can't overcome because there's institutional racism that's always going to keep us down. If that had been the case, the fight would have been given up, who knows, 150 years ago. But the fights in the civil rights movement were successful with that Voting Rights Act and the Fair Housing laws and the Civil Rights Act of '64, all the things we get spoken of earlier. And we must continue that positive momentum in every way that we can, because the consequences are too great if we give up. It's for not just our lives, but it's for our children and our grandchildren and for the legacy that we leave. Thank you.
Absolutely. Powerful. Thank you. Representative Graham.
Thank you. I want to say it's a pleasure to be a part of this discussion, and I look forward to future discussions. Matter of fact, our Democratic Party is having a Zoom meeting as we speak, and I'm going to be reporting back to them about Chop It Up and what it means going forward. And I just want to leave everyone with this thought. Our vote or a lack of vote has a consequence. And I am reflecting back to the race in Georgia, the senatorial race. Think of what could have happened or the situation we would be in today had those two gentlemen lost that election. Our vote is powerful. And I just want to encourage our citizens throughout the state to be a voice. I mean, you can be a voice in many different ways. You don't have to get out and work a campaign. You don't have to get out and get out the vote flyers and things like that on doors. You can be a voice and you can encourage your neighbors to get out and vote. So there are many ways that we can engage and be involved. So I just want to leave this message with folks. Vote is powerful. And I'll just leave this thought with everyone as well. I am a candidate for Congress in the United States in the 9th Congressional District. And I'm doing this because I see what has happened to our country. I can see what's happened in the 9th Congressional District. And that is the reason I'm a candidate, because I believe we need folks in Congress who will be a voice for the people who need to be heard, and for individuals and working families who need a hand up. So thank you. It's been a pleasure here to be a part of this, and I look forward to continuing future conversations.
Thank you, Senator. To you. All right, Brother Aaron, gonna come to you, man.
Thank you, everyone. Like all of our panelists, you guys come through. You've come through tonight, and I truly appreciate all the insight, the wisdom that you guys have, the institutional knowledge. I truly appreciate it. I'm not going to reiterate what everyone said, but what I will say is that, as whether it's a member of the NCDP, myself, or an elected official, I think that we need to invest in our citizens, the local people on the ground, and help them build their spheres of influence. Because when they have their sphere of influence and that's grown, and they have a group of people that are committed, that's when the organizing truly begins. That's when we can, as a state, because as we know, every cycle, a coordinated campaign comes in, and there's a bumpy road here, there's a bumpy road there, things don't go the way we want it. But when we are running on all cylinders, when we have just everyone connected on every level with regards to organizing, with regards to messaging that is tailored to that specific community, to every single specific community. That's where we see the change on the ground. And that's where day after day leading into 2022, and then beyond that, cycle after cycle, we'll see the difference in terms of electing people that we want to see in office and keeping them in office. So I just want to thank you guys again for the opportunity to be on Zoom with you and hopefully meet you guys soon. I would really like to do that. But it's just a pleasure to hear from everybody tonight.
Awesome. Thank you, Aaron. And before we dismiss tonight, again, I did a quick search of those on the call. Majority of you, I know some of you, this may be my first time virtually meeting you. But I will just encourage all of us to keep driving. It's something I remember the patriarchs of old used to tell me all the time. They say, it don't matter how beautiful your car is. If you ain't got no gas in it, you ain't going nowhere. So all of us in here, again, my hope is that this call has served as a pit stop for you, a gas fill up in a way for you to keep going, and to also go ahead and carry this message on to others, because the work that we do is so important. And I'm so honored that we were able to do and have this conversation tonight with all of you wonderful gentlemen. All right. I'm going to send it over to Shantae Anthony for a final announcement before we dismiss. Shantae, it's in your hands.
Shantae, your
Shantae, you with me?
Your microphone. There we go.
Before. I thought I unmuted myself before. I apologize. I live on Zoom. You think I remember by now. But I want to take an opportunity just to thank everyone that joined us tonight, all the panelists and all of the attendees. This was an awesome conversation. I love the dialogue. You hit all the topics that I would have loved for you to hit. So I'm glad that you were able to do that. I always tell everyone I'm not a man of color, so I try to step back from these events and let you all have your space. But I'm always here listening and ready to jump in when I need to. But I wanted to let you know that this is just the beginning. We kicked off last week. We're going to continue to have these conversations across the state. We want all of you who are here tonight to step up and step into those roles of making sure that the conversation continues in your communities. So what we're going to do for all these first times, we're going to all make sure we're here, but we want to make sure that some people in this conversation are going to step in that role of being an organizer and making sure the conversations go forward. I'm sure all of you have my email because you got it from the registration, but I hope that you'll contact me and let me know that you're interested in continuing. I'm excited about what we're doing. This is an important program, and we are going to make sure that we continue to do the work. I thank you. I can't thank you enough for your participation tonight and for your true commitment to this dialogue and understanding the importance of it. So please, I will put my email in the chat just in case you didn't see it, but please just reach out so we can make sure that we keep the conversation going and that we're able to continue to have these events and get this dialogue going.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. Well, if all hearts and minds are clear, I do believe it is 8:30, and I'm going to let everyone go ahead and have the rest of your evening. Until next time, y'all take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.